Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Corner podcast series, where we'll discuss the latest scientific advances and technological progress in the world of advanced materials and what is around the corner and what is about to come. Today with us, I have Dr. Amaia Zurutuza, the CTO of Graphenea in Spain. Amaia, I'm so excited to have you today. How are you?
Great. And you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How is the situation in Spain?
Well, it's not so great, but I think other countries are doing much worse today. So we had maybe a much worse situation during like March to May. But I mean, things are not doing great. I mean, we are in some sort of lockdown since like beginning of November. First, we couldn't move from our cities, from the cities we live in. Now we are allowed to move within the province. Now bars are open, but they close at 8 sharp. And
so our lives are so different these days, isn't it?
Yes,
Really changed the shape of our lives. But on a much brighter note, tell us a little bit about yourself. I remember that I think we met about 5 or 6 years ago in a graphene conference. So you've been in this field for a long time. I'm very curious to actually learn more about yourself and what made you get into the graphene field.
So the story is pretty long, as you said. I've been
Tell us. I'm excited about it.
But my interest for science started when I was very young, already in school, when we were doing experiments. I felt very excited to know about the outcome before it happened and so on. So that's how I got interested in science. And I did chemistry at the time, and when I was doing chemistry, there was an opportunity to go as an Erasmus student abroad, and I took it. And at the time, it was not so common as it is today, because now it seems almost all the students have this time abroad. And at the end, I found that it was a very enriching experience. And I went as Erasmus to Scotland in the UK.
Interesting.
Yes, with their Scottish accent and so on. At the beginning, I mean, I learned English at the school, but I couldn't understand anything.
So I bet that's a different way of learning English.
Yes. They have their own language, let's say. But I mean, it was really good. And not only professionally, but also, I mean, personally, I thought it was a very enriching experience. And at the end, when you are abroad, I mean, your friends become your family. So I thought that was really nice. And after I completed my degree, I got offered a PhD position there. So I stayed, and that's where my adventure with Scotland started. Because
so you drink Scotch. You must be a spirit.
I started drinking tea. I drank Guinness. I mean, I loved whiskey, so completely changed my life.
Very enriching experience. So what was your PhD in?
So my PhD was, I mean, I did chemistry, and the specialization was polymer chemistry. So my thesis was about microgels. So it's like a special type of polymers, and it was for intraocular lenses. So, for example, it was, of course, early stage research, but the idea was that now if you have these cataracts, that is like a cloud layer that is formed in the eye as you get older, the idea was to remove that, and instead of putting a rigid lens, to inject microgels, and they would cross-link and form this lens in the eye. So it was, I mean, I really loved the biomedical field, and I realized it was quite sort of early stage research. So after that, I got interested into more applied research. So I found a job in a pharmaceutical company, also in Scotland. And I worked there for 6 years. And after being 12 years in Scotland, I decided that, I mean, I was, let's say, looking into myself and thinking that I wanted to find my place in the world. And I decided I wanted to move back home to the Basque Country, which is in the north of Spain. So I started looking for jobs, and there was this opportunity to work with graphene. So I saw an ad where they were looking for a scientific director for a new company called Graphenea, and to work in commercializing graphene and so on. And at the time, I hardly knew what graphene was. So I had to look into it and so on. And I was lucky enough, they hired me because I think there were not so many people with experience in graphene and so on. So yeah, so that's how my adventure started 10 years ago.
10 years ago and 10 years in graphene. You're stuck with graphene.
I'm stuck with it now. No, I found the field extremely interesting and learning new things. I mean, it was very hard at the beginning because I changed fields from polymer chemistry, biomedical world to graphene and nanomaterial. But I don't regret anything, which is good looking back now. And the idea of Graphenea started when our CEO heard about graphene in the news. He comes he was working as a consultant in PricewaterhouseCoopers and so on, and he heard about graphene in the news and he thought, oh, maybe I can make money with a company that makes graphene. So he contacted Chema Pitarque, who is the director of a nanotechnology research center that is based in San Sebastián, in the north of Spain, in the Basque Country, where I wanted to go. So perfect place, it's a beautiful city. So that's how it all started. And I was the first person they hired. And then I got a small team and yeah, it was really exciting at the beginning because we were like 3-4 people doing everything. I mean, we were the marketing department, sales, we did purchase orders, and it was, yeah. How do you do that? I mean, I was a researcher. I was not in marketing or in human resources but yeah, so I guess it's like in any startup that you have to learn a bit of everything.
It is amazing. It is really a startup spirit that in the beginning you are everything and you have to push it along. So is it true that then you are not from the graphene field and the start of the company was not from a graphene? And perhaps maybe that formula actually worked because you guys have had such great success compared to some of the other companies that start from the graphene background.
Well, I guess that 10 years ago, there were not so many people with experience in graphene. So also maybe that puts things in context. But yeah, I don't know. I had to learn a lot of things. And of course, after 10 years now, I feel very comfortable in the field. And yeah, and I think we have a great team because at the end, it's not only me. Graphenea is now, we are 30 people and the success is thanks to all those 30 people. Yeah.
I'm very excited to learn a little bit more about what Graphenea does and the company itself and kind of what kind of graphene or what kind of sector you identify with.
So we have, so at the end, our aim is to produce graphene to sell it to researchers. I mean, that is our aim today, but of course in the future, we want to have applications in the market, graphene products, and then we will sell it to an industrial market. But at the moment, I mean, graphene is very related to research and a lot of research needs to be done for that to happen. So what we produce is we produce CVD graphene films for certain applications.
Like tell us what CVD graphene is.
How? You can see?
No, not how, but tell us just what the difference between CVD. I come from the CVD graphene background. I've spent enough of time in the clean room making CVD graphene, but for our audience, tell us a little bit about CVD graphene.
So CVD graphene is like a continuous film that you grow on top of a metal catalyst by injecting methane at high temperatures. And you get this homogeneous, uniform, one atom thick layer graphene film that then you transfer it to different substrates for different applications. And some of those applications could be like in photonics for future telecommunications, let's say to speed up this data transfer, be able to download films very fast, documents, and so on, but also for biosensors or for photosensors, night vision cameras, and so on. But in Graphenea, we also have a small unit for making the powder format. So we have both.
I did not know that. So what is the expertise, the core focus expertise of the company? Is it CVD graphene or is it the powder form of graphene?
Well, I think both of them. In the powder, we have graphene oxide only, so we don't produce other types of graphene powder. But yeah, we have a pilot plant. So after 10 years, we have a pilot plant to produce graphene oxide. And on the film side, 10 years ago, we started selling very, very small samples. And now we produce up to wafer scale, like 200 millimeters graphene wafers. And more recently, we have started offering graphene foundry services. So what does this mean? So we fabricate graphene transistors for customers. So the customer comes with their design and we fabricate transistors for them. In order to, because at the end, transistors are processed in foundries, and foundries, of course, are not used to graphene because it's a new material. So somebody has to do the job. And we thought that way we could help our customers to focus on the application, on their device, rather than on the fabrication process that is quite tricky and involves a lot of steps. And at the end, graphene films are not easy to handle.
That is quite interesting because, as you mentioned, one of the biggest hurdles that we have for adoption and integration of graphene is the mismatch that we have between the graphene as a two-dimensional material process for the microfabrication and nanofabrication facilities that already exist and the foundries, right? So that is a hurdle and a limitation. And is this a part of the company that you guys are foreseeing as a very strategic direction to expand on, to actually to provide those services on site? Where does that element of integration fit in?
Yeah, at the end, we have definitely identified it as a strategic decision to go deeper in the value chain and provide those transistors. I mean, of course, we are aware that large foundries will get into graphene later on, or maybe sooner than we think. But at the moment, there is a need, that value chain that we are trying to fulfill and also establish ourselves as a producer of graphene transistors, which is not easy. But I'm pretty sure also like that foundries will get involved. Probably maybe they are waiting for making the decision to see the products maybe closer to the market, while as a startup you take more risks and you have to, yeah.
How do you see this market? How do you see the graphene in photonic space, in electronic space? As a scientist and also as someone who has been in this field and has so much knowledge and experience, realistically and honestly, where do you see this field going? And I'm not talking about the graphene in composites or the powder. I'm really interested in your perspective on the graphene film.
I mean, I see the adoption to the market, or the time to market, will be longer for the films. But maybe one of the first applications that we see makes sense is in biosensors. So, I mean, graphene has specific characteristics that make it ideal for that type of application. So we think biosensors, maybe photodetectors, those two would be the first ones to hit the market in the next 2-3 years, no more than that. Yes, and then for photonics, I mean, there are the challenges, the integration challenges, and the graphene requirements are maybe more demanding. So this will take maybe more years. But a good indication that the applications are going in the right direction is that there are SMEs focusing specifically on photodetectors. I mean, at least in Europe, there are 2 SMEs that are willing to commercialize graphene-based photodetectors for night vision camera applications and so on. And there's also another SME for these telecommunication photonic type of devices that was established recently. So this is an indication that people are believing in graphene for these products, and we think they are going in the right direction.
What application of graphene are you most excited about? If we had to look in the next 10 years and you could envision and imagine, what are you personally most excited about?
I think any application, I'm excited already to see after 10 years working on the material every day, seeing it evolve. I would be happy with any success that graphene can have in the market. But of course, biosensors, if you can detect viruses, let's say SARS-CoV-2, or even cancer biomarkers, I mean, this is something that is providing to the community. And yeah, it would be really nice to see graphene succeeding in those applications.
If you could have anything in the world, just snap your finger and things with hurdles could go away for the success of the company, which hurdles would you pick in terms of, let's say, funding? I don't know, the adoption issues. What are the hurdles that in an ideal world would not exist?
Our everyday pains, you mean?
Exactly, your everyday pains.
Okay, I would like for us, I mean, we do growth, we do transfer, we do device fabrication of these films. So if we can get the perfect growth, fast, high throughput, high yield, the same for the transfer and the same for device fabrication, then my job is done.
You can go home and drink some big glass of scotch, right?
Yeah.
Is a lack of funding or adoption of some of these materials, nanomaterials, have I would say, especially in the US, we see that there's an image that comes with a lot of the two-dimensional and also nanomaterial, just banking on the last 10, 15 years, that is not quite sometimes positive. It is more regarded as a hype. So there's not a lot of kind of interest. There was a lot of interest, but it's going down. Do you see that still as a hurdle in Europe and in what you do, or you guys have established your own niche and there is really not, that does not really affect you as much?
Well, I guess the media, what the media says, of course, it does affect you, but I mean, we also realize that the media many times oversells things, like you say, no, graphene products tomorrow in the market, and you're like, I mean, that's impossible. So maybe they should become more conservative in saying these things. But yeah, as you say, there is always this hype curve, and then you start going down. But then is when things are getting serious. And as I already mentioned, people believe in graphene, they believe in some of the applications. Otherwise, people wouldn't be starting up companies and so on, because at the end it's a lot of effort and you have to really believe in what you do. Otherwise, you are not going to be successful. So I think we should, let's say, work with the media, but try to tell them that they have to be careful with what they say, that things at the end take time. And we have a lot of examples in history where materials have needed more than 20 years or even 30 to make it a success in the market and provide new products to the citizens. So
I absolutely agree. And I think that I always say this. I said sometimes the hype of graphene has actually hurt us so much more, because when we started saying, oh, things are going to come along in the next few years, 10 years ago, then now when we say, look at all the advances, they say, well, we thought you guys were going to come up with flexible phones in everybody's hands like in 2013. What happened? No, that was not realistic. I think with hype and with unrealistic expectation comes a lot of disappointment and comes a lot of mistrust from the public and sometimes from the funders. But I feel like we are kind of past that. I feel that the trend is very positive these days with everything that is happening. And you mentioned that in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be seeing some great applications in photonics, and who better than you to tell us, because you are in that segment. So those are very exciting. And the pandemic has really impacted everybody in the world. And it's not just the way that it's changed our lives. And I would really like to hear your thoughts about that. But also, I believe that there are micro and macro trends that are going to be setting in as a result of this, that are going to change the way we innovate, to change the way that we actually solve problems, the way that we work together, and maybe the way that we collaborate to be able to kind of get to a final point and get past the decision-making point and get to a final product. How do you think the pandemic is going to impact the progress in the graphene and two-dimensional world?
I think the pandemic has made us more creative in a way. I mean, that's the positive part. Also, it has a negative part. But in the creative, I mean, for example, Graphenea, as soon as in March, early March, we heard about the pandemic, and we heard that there was a shortage of supply of disinfectant gel, at least in Spain, in March. So we decided to use our reactors to produce disinfectant gel. We found the recipe of the ohms on the internet and so on, and we decided to supply that. And we also started giving free graphene samples to researchers that are working in COVID-related research. So it made us human in a way, and more compassionate, and wanted really to help to the community. So I think that was very important. The negative part maybe, and I know it's not good to say negative, but in a way has made us also a bit less human, because we don't have so many face-to-face meetings, our social interaction life, even, I mean, of course, at the end at work, we spend many hours and we socialize a lot, at least in Spain, but I'm sure in the US is the same, and in all the other parts in the world. So it has really had not such a good impact in that sense, I think. But the creativity, we have reacted very fast. AMPT is another example. I mean, the pandemic created it. So yeah, I think there are a lot of positive things that have come out of that.
And you are a part of the Spain chapter of AMPT, and you're absolutely right. I think that the negatives are, we could go on with the negatives of COVID until tomorrow. But I think there's always a silver lining that we can look at things. And I believe that the pandemic really showed us where our limitations and our deficiencies are. And that it also showed us that when there is a problem that really affects us all, we have to come together. It's not about a country. It's not about a national agenda. It's not about one company. It's not about graphene versus another material. It is really about what can we do together. And that was basically the basis of everybody coming together around AMPT was, can we, it's not around kind of the graphene community. It is not around one country. It is really the idea of, can we create an infrastructure for material science to respond when it is needed? And I think that I see that as a silver lining. And I hope that what you mentioned, that creativity aspect sticks. And I hope that we have become somehow more disjointed, but at the same time, we have become a little bit more collaborative in my mind.
Yes.
We have learned that we don't have to always go to conferences to start a new collaboration. Now we use Zoom and we find collaborators and we send samples around and we collaborate, right?
True, we even do drinking online now.
Maybe I should actually get into that as well. I have my tea always. I have my Christmas cup tea still. But it was great to have this conversation with you. I am very excited to have you as a part of the AMT and also as a part of this conversation. One pre-last question. If you could look into the future, I don't know, decades from now, 1, 2, 3 decades from now, where do you see yourself going? Do you have something in mind that you're running towards?
I'm more of a here today, the present, and so on, this awareness of consciousness. So yeah, so I think I really enjoy what I do now today, and I'm very happy. So I would stay more in the present. If there was a time machine where I could go for one day and come back, yeah, then this is a tough question. I guess, yeah, I would like to see how science progresses to make our planet, like, let's say, more aware of our environment. I mean, this pandemic also, I mean, it has made us realize that, I mean, we are eating up the space of wildlife, and that's why there was this virus coming from wild animals to humans, this transmission that is not going to be the only one, that there will be more to come. So I hope we learn this lesson and we take more care of our planet. because it's where we live in, and we want it to be there for forever. So yeah, maybe it's more that way that I
That's
see.
a great wish to have for the future of us being more aware. And really, I think as scientists and as people in the material field, we have tools in our disposal, right? It is really about that collective of us applying those tools to solve some of the challenges. And I believe that the challenge, the real big puzzle that we have right now is how to create a more sustainable and profitable, I would say, a more habitable planet for ourselves and for the future of humanity. So I get that. And speaking of living in the present, what are you cooking tonight?
So, I mean, maybe it's a bit, I'm going to make tortillas. It's easy, takes a bit of time, but it's very easy. So you fry potatoes and then you beat some eggs, you mix them, and that's it. It's ready. So that's my dinner.
That sounds like a very good nutritious. It's got protein and it's got enough of a good carb. So that's probably what's waiting for you. Maya, I want to thank you again so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I hope that we'll get a chance to meet again in person very soon in 2021, hopefully in the next 5-6 months. To normal. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.